Beto ORourke is 46. Bernie Sanders is Keokuk, Iowa. Diana Martinez, 70, looked at Beto ORourke, 46, and made her choice. It was time for Generation X to fix this country. Doesn't he remind you of Kennedy? Ms. Martinez said. Some closer to Mr. ORourke's age were less convinced. Standing near the back, I am looking for someone to be as progressive as Bernie, Ms. Cruz said, tugging on a Red Hot Chili Peppers shirt. Actually, she amended, perhaps just Bernie himself. Mr. ORourke this past week with an aspirational pitch and a semi-improvisational tour of Iowa, with a Hawkeyes baseball cap and bilingual profanity on the stump, broadcasting his message of generational uplift and immediately thrusting age into the main currents of the 2020 race. The contenders leading in initial polls, and former Vice President, will be 79 and 78 by Inauguration Day 2021. President Trump will, yet as party activists begin to appraise the field, they are already grappling with whether to once again embrace a younger candidate who reflects the future or shrug off age and elevate a veteran politician who most clearly represents their simultaneous craving for and someone who can. If history is a guide, Mr. ORourke, and other Democrats betting on a youthful appeal like Senator Cory Booker, 49. Julian Castro, but for many in the party, dedication to this critical component of past success, putting forward a new face, is being tested in the 2020 race by twin impulses: the devotion to Mr. Sanders among voters many decades younger than him, who share his belief that American society is rife with inequities that will not be solved by candidates like Mr. ORourke, and an overriding desire among Democrats to defeat a president they believe is a menace to democracy. Supporters of Mr. Sanders believe he offers transformational change, the promise of not merely ousting President Trump but also remaking the country into a more just place, and brings experience that would help him survive a general election and expand the electorate. At the same time, moderates in the party are tempted by Mr. Biden, wagering that the political equivalent of comfort food to America may prove the safest recipe. This combination of a primary electorate that is at once hungry for structural, even radical, reform and deeply nervous about nominating someone too callow to defeat Mr. Trump poses perhaps the most serious challenge to a candidate like Mr. ORourke. He shuns ideology. I know Bernie has a laid-out plan for Medicare and free tuition, said Austin Palmer, a 25-year-old South Carolinian who went to see Mr. Sanders vow political revolution Thursday night in North Charleston. Beto has made Mr. Palmer invoke the recent scandal involving parents committing bribery, shaking his head at what he sees as a rotten society that must be raised, not reformed. Yet he also ended, I am really concerned about being able to beat Trump, he said. That's my big worry. Mr. ORourke has ample time to flesh out his agenda. He spoke fondly, if not always specifically, this past week of bold, progressive ideas. And he enjoys considerable assets, a history of record-shattering online fundraising, the appeal of celebrity in a country besotted by fame, and a grip on the imagination of a party that loves to fall in love after Senate race in Texas. But he is facing a 2020 campaign and election that differ considerably from when Democrats last rewarded a generational argument in a presidential race by nominating then-Senator Barack Obama. There's still a big part of the party that wants to fall in love, and there's another part of the party that will settle for anything that will beat Trump, said Senator Christopher S. Murphy of Connecticut, at 45 the youngest Democratic senator. I think that's there could ultimately be a best of both worlds solution. It just happened that in 2008 and 2012 we fell in love with the most electable candidate, Mr. Murphy recalled. But like many Democrats, he could only guess for now. I would generally make the case that the Democratic Party should always be nominating the next generation candidate, he said, except I am not sure any of the old rules apply. The evidence was conflicting at Mr. Sanders' South Carolina rally on Thursday. As unfathomable as it may be to the moderate wing of the Democratic Party, many in attendance made the case for Mr. Sanders as much on his electability as his liberal platform. I want to support someone who I think really has a chance of winning, said Brandon Green, a 27-year-old student and pastor. We can't take again. And Tasha Horton, a 45-year-old real estate broker with college-age children who love the burn, allowed that her love is for Kamala, but strategically it's either Bernie or Biden. Ms. Horton, who went to the same church gymnasium to see earlier this month, added, "We have to think that way. You can't think with." Yet even as Mr. Green and Ms. Horton, who are both African American, made the case for Mr. Sanders, the bulk of the audience reflected limits in his appeal in a city where nearly half of the population is black. The rally attendees were overwhelmingly white. As a soloist, many of the voters at the Sanders event said they were open to other candidates. They just wanted to. Still, as Mr. Sanders took the stage and thundered against economic inequality, excoriating the compensation packages of individual health care executives, the contrast between his unsparing indictment and comprehensive agenda and Mr. O'Rourke's frequent generalities could not have been starker. "I want to do something that very few public figures will do, and I want to tell you exactly what justice means to me, and I hope to you," the senator told his youthful, sign-waving charges. In Iowa, meanwhile, the newest candidate in the race was casting his political worldview as a kind of high-minded pragmatism, describing bipartisanship as a necessity during his 6 years in the House minority. "I made it my mission to ensure that the perfect never becomes the enemy of the good," Mr. O'Rourke said to Cheers in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, boasting of a veterans' health care measure signed into law by Mr. Trump. He frames his events as two-sided conversations, at times prodding voters to say how they might solve the challenges they cite. Thoughts? When pressed by voters and reporters for more details, Mr. O'Rourke has equivocated or vacillated on several policy questions. Asked about health, "I think that's one of the ways to ensure that we get to guaranteed, high-quality health care for every single American," he said of Medicare for All in Washington, Iowa. "I am no longer." Asked at another event about reparations, a growing issue in the Democratic race, Mr. O'Rourke held forth for 4 minutes on John Lewis, Martin Luther King, the arc of systemic racism, without answering the question of where he stood. But Mr. O'Rourke's lack of detail does not dissuade his most ardent supporters. As with Mr. Obama, Trump appeals to the worst of America, candidates like Beto appeal to the best of America, said Representative Hakeem Jeffries of New York, 48, a Democratic leader who may become the first Generation X House Speaker someday and has not backed anyone in the race. Across eastern Iowa, Mr. O'Rourke encountered many young people excited by his candidacy, arriving in T-shirts from his Senate race or, in one case, a customized Betomania button featuring the candidate with a guitar. "Everything about him is an inspiration," said Angela Scott, 27, after meeting and high-fiving Mr. O'Rourke at a sub shop in Burlington, Iowa. "You can't help but." In other moments, though, his audiences included a striking dichotomy: enchanted older voters, convinced that younger voters would flock to Mr. O'Rourke and rescue the party from Mr. Trump, and younger voters excited by someone else. As Mr. O'Rourke spoke in Mount Pleasant, standing on a cafe counter, a cluster of teenage fans of Mr. Sanders watched in the wings, curious about Mr. O'Rourke but unmoved by any suggestion that Mr. Sanders is not a man for the times. "That's ageism," said Garrett Dodson, a self-described socialist progressive who will turn 18 next month. "I don't have a problem." Mr. Dodson and his friends suggested that their elders underestimated the boiling anger of the teen and 20-something generation, aghast at what they see as their forebears' indifference to climate change and student loan debt. "General Z, baby," Mr. Dodson said. "General Z is coming," warned a peer, Madison Brady, 18. "We're so angry," Matt Flegenheimer reported from Keokuk, Iowa, and Jonathan Martin from North Charleston, SC.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. You fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.